Well, I want to start by saying thank you for letting me be here. I wouldn't be here were it not for you. That is the truth of it. It's really important for you to know that. So for those of you that I don't know very well, I'll tell you really quickly a little bit more about my background, and those of you whom I know well, it's so nice to see faces that feel like friends and family and to be in this community. So I want to start by that. I'm Tedra Cobb, and I'm running for Congress. I want to start sort of after this, and I want to ask you guys a question. How are you feeling? How do you feel?
Depressed.
After my speech?
No. Just in general.
In general, how else?
I feel like every day I'm watching another plane hit another tower.
Okay. Anybody else?
I feel hopeful.
All right, that's Deb, man. She says she feels hopeful.
Nervous.
Nervous, all right. Anxious, yeah, what else? Anybody?
Puzzled
Puzzled, sure. And puzzled about,
how this can be happening.
okay, or also what to do, right? Yeah, okay.
For 3 years, I have not slept well because of the Republican administration in our place.
Yeah.
I just feel like we've lost our position as leader of the free world, that we're not respected, that our friends and allies don't respect us, that it's just chaotic, that there's so many lies and cover-ups. I just feel like it's turmoil.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there isn't a little bit of that with any presidency, but this is just over the top.
Yeah.
I've learned to expect the unexpected.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, things get normalized, yeah.
Which is really scary.
Yeah.
And I often wonder whether when Barack Obama was president, Republicans felt the same way we're feeling right now.
That's a really good point. And did you hear that? She said, I wonder when Barack Obama was president, whether Republicans felt the way I'm feeling right now. I think there are a few things. As I sit here and I listen to all of you, there are a couple things. One, I am running for Congress because I've spent 30 years with many of you. Arlene isn't here today, but I've spent a long time with our communities working to make our lives better. Whether it was healthcare, or helping in the environment, or education, or we can talk about all of those issues. That's why I'm running. It hasn't changed for the last 3 years. We've got 8 months to go. I want you to know that Northern New York isn't just some area on a map for me, but it's been my home for 30 years. I've raised my children here, right? Married my husband, raised my children, and made deep, deep commitments to this community. And we are looking at Washington right now and the chaos that is causing so many of you to feel frustrated, and looking at the money that is influencing Washington right now. And this is the time. If we send the same people back, we will get the same results. This is our opportunity to win this seat back. Remember, we have had a Republican who went on to be the Secretary of the Army, John McHugh, on this end. And many of us cannot forget that we aligned on lots of values with John McHugh. We cannot forget that marriage equality passed New York State because of 3 Republican women in the Assembly, Dede Scozzafava, Teresa Sayward, and Janet Dupre. So I want us to remember that we can overlap with other people, and that the goal for a lot of people is to divide this community. And it feels terrible when we're waiting in line. It feels terrible when we feel like we are either the blue dot or the lone person with these values. But let's think about our core values. Do we care about our families and their health?
Yes.
Do we care about our children and their health and mental health?
Yes.
Do we care about the environment, clean air and clean water? And we want to eat the fish, whether it's out of the river or whether it's out of the Lake Champlain or Lake Ontario. Do we care about that?
Yes.
These are things that we are fundamentally aligned with. Do we care about sending kids to school where they can learn and then either graduate and go on to college, or whether they can end up being an electrical person putting solar on a house like my husband does, right? Do we care about that? Jobs and a future here, and raising our children and letting them stay, and nurturing our communities. I think we have more that is alike with our communities. Folks, I started my career in the New York State prison system as a Spanish-speaking correction counselor. And I was newly married, and I got an invitation to join the Pirates Fire Department because they were short of firefighters. My husband and I were just newly married, and we joined the Pirates Fire Department together. And I learned something really valuable about that. A fire goes off, and you don't stop and say, is there a Republican or a Democrat in that house? You just go put the fire out. There are lots of us who serve on boards, who serve on Kiwanis, who are on the hospital board, who are helping to feed people or volunteering in our neighborhood centers. We are doing that with our friends and neighbors, even the ones we might disagree on some big issues. So I know I'm not necessarily talking about me and my background exactly, but I'm telling you who I am. And the who that I am now, and the deep commitment to this community, is the who that I will be in Congress. We have someone right now who has decided, she's taken money from companies like Amgen that have preyed on our seniors, and then voted to allow a taxpayer-funded lawsuit that discriminates against people with pre-existing conditions. That means you and I are paying for a lawsuit. Your hard-earned tax dollars are paying for a lawsuit to discriminate against ourselves. I'm in this race because I have a kid with a pre-existing condition. Most of us know what that's like. I'm running against someone who voted against a prescription drug plan very recently and gave the reason for that because it's a tax on the pharmaceutical companies. She somehow forgot that many of us are making a decision whether or not we pay our taxes or we take our prescription drugs. We put food on the table or we take our prescription drugs. We need to, when we knock on every door, when we talk to our neighbors, we need to ask, how do you feel? And why? Because a lot of people are frustrated right now, and they're frustrated with the chaos, they're frustrated with the money in politics, and that's where we align with a lot of people in our community. That's where we can find that common ground. We are not just a blue or a red. This district is amazingly and fiercely purple.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to do. We've got to find that alignment with so many other people and let them know that we want to make, as many of you said, I want to make this country a better place. I care about this country. That's where we can align. So I just want to kind of wrap up what you've done earlier just with a pep talk there, because we're about to go get petitions. And as we talk to people, it's not about me. And it's not even about you knocking on the door. It's about the person who opens the door. It's about stopping for a moment and saying, you know, I'm knocking on your door, I'd love you to sign my petition. What's important to you? What is your story? And finding whatever that common ground is. Because when we can find the common ground, we stop that clash. And that's what we've got to do for the next 9 months. Because this is the reality, folks. Just recently, I was asked a question about all of the people who have helped me along the way and supported this campaign financially. So we've raised a lot of money recently, okay? The average donation is $27, just people. And so I was asked a question, what are you gonna do with all that? And what I said is, I'm really fiscally very conservative. I'm very careful with every dollar I get. And here's why. I have 9 adopted siblings. 9. And my parents started a foster care agency, so I had foster care siblings in and out. My dad was a teacher, my mom didn't work. My mother had a dish called Chicken Surprise. You find a chicken? I'll be surprised. So I told that story, and you laugh. Well, you know what? Elise Stefanik went on Twitter and laughed about that story. Not in a good way, but in a bad way. Here's the thing. What person don't you know in this community who might struggle to put food on their table? What person do you know in this community that might be working 1 or 2 or even 3 jobs to put food on the table? I am running against someone who fundamentally not only does not understand us, but is voting against us and is voting with the corporate interests that are harming us. And that's what we've got to get people to understand, that we could have a representative who cares about us and who is deeply committed to making our lives better, and who will do that not only in Washington, but will be working with us in our own communities. The best predictor of future behavior is what? Past behavior. The best predictor of future behavior is? One more time. The best predictor of future behavior is? That's right. You know me because of the work I have done with so many people in this community. You know Elise Stefanik because she has used this district as a political rung in the ladder and her future career. And if we think that that's going to change, we are deluding ourselves. Right?
Right.
So, the opportunity now is to work really hard to finish this very long marathon, right? To knock on every door, to go to events together, to smile at people, and when they're mad at us, just be like a penguin and let it the water fall off of you, right? It's tough, but we've got to do that, and then we've got to go on and look at the next person and find that common ground, because we will find it if we look. We will, if we take a moment and pause, right, and ask, we'll find the common ground. We'll listen, and that's what we've got to do, because no matter what, when we win in November, guess what we've got to do? We've got to work together to make the community better. That's our deep commitment. It's not just about winning, it's about when we win. How do we work together in our communities? And so we're just starting that pattern right now, right? We're just starting what we're going to be doing after we win and making our communities better. So that's my pep talk for today. Now how do you feel? A little better? A little better? All right. All right. So I want to introduce Aziz to you because one of the things that we wanted to do today was talk about petitioning. So Tony is my campaign manager. And Aziz is here, and he's going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do from here in terms of petitioning. I know you guys petitioned for lots of different people because last time we had a primary, but of course we don't have a primary this time. So that's really exciting, and we're really able to focus on getting those petitions, knocking on those doors, and starting to build relationships. My goal is to knock on a door, to get a petition signature, and then I get to write people a letter and say thank you, and then you get to follow up with a call, and so that we're actually building those relationships to get people to the polls, and so this is just like phase 1 of the next 9 months, 8.5. 8.5. We can do it, right?
Right.
I want to just end what I'm going to say. I over this last year, lots of you may or may not know that I do consulting for a living, although not much of it anymore. But in the last year, I did some more consulting work because it was a little bit of an off year for me. And so my mother died 10 years ago in January. And I was blessed and lucky to care for my mother through hospice. And I served on the hospice board for a few years. And then this last year, I was asked to work with the hospice in St. Lawrence County in doing some strategic work and doing focus groups to help make our hospice stronger. And recently I did a report to the board. So like this, I met with the board and had to do a report with them. And as I was waiting, there was a table with a bunch of inspirational quotes. And I took an inspirational quote, and I want to share one with you. And it's, "These mountains that you are carrying, you were only meant to climb." These mountains you are carrying, you were only meant to climb. And I want you to know that first off, you don't have to carry those mountains. You're only meant to climb them. But secondly, whether you're carrying them or whether you're climbing, you are not alone. This has been a journey for me to be with you, to be a representative. What we need are representatives who will carry those mountains with us, who will climb with us. And I want you to know that I keep that card on my desk. So as I'm sitting there and I'm calling people and I'm talking to people, I think about that every day. I think about all of the burdens that people are carrying. And I want you to know you're not alone. We know each other, and we have to remind each other that we are not alone. And I want you to know that as a representative, you will not be alone. I will be with you. That is my goal. That is my commitment now, and it will be my commitment in November, and it will be my commitment in January. All right? All right.